Hey guys, today we are starting our new unit. This unit's all about graphing. So we're going to be graphing linear functions, we're going to be graphing linear, linear inequalities, and we're also going to be graphing some absolute value equations, okay? So as we go through this, you have to remember some things that you learned in Algebra 1. The most important of which is this little equation right here, okay? Y equals mx plus b. Whenever we get a function by itself, whenever we isolate the y in a function, it really shows us a lot about what that function is. And so we'll be doing that a lot. But you need to understand that the m in this function, the number that's attached to the x, that is our slope. Okay, you've heard that before. And the b, that's going to be our y-intercept. Just from those 2 points, we can learn a lot about our graph, and we can also graph very efficiently. All right, there are other ways to graph though. We can find my x-intercept, we can find my y-intercept. To find my x-intercept, we can just plug in 0 for y, and it gives me where my graph intercepts the x-axis. To plug in my y-intercept, we can look back at my slope-intercept form, or I can just plug 0 in for x, and it's going to give me my y-intercept. So those are quick and easy ways for us to find points in our graph that we can just plug in and find. Now, if we look at this equation over here, you can see that we have a y-intercept of 1. Okay, so my y-intercept is at 0, 1. All right, you can see that there. And then if we look at my slope, to find my slope, we're going to count up, 2, over 1. So remember, the slope is kind of like the angle that your graph is at. It's really just what's called the rise over run, the amount you go up divided by how much you go over. This is an example of a positive slope, and you'll see some negative slopes here in a little bit. But we're going to go up 2 over 1, so my slope is going to be 2, because 2 divided by 1 is 2. So I can just write my equation out. Remember, your slope is attached to the x, your y-intercept is attached to the b. Okay, and so we're going to go y equals 2x plus 1 for my y-intercept. Okay? All right, so let's try out some problems here. So on number 1, it says find the slope and intercepts, then graph. All right, so the first thing we need to do for all of these problems is solve for y. Okay? So to do that here, this one's really simple. I just need to move this negative 4x over. To do that, I'm just going to add 4x to both sides, and I'm going to get y equals 4x minus 1. And then I can find my x-intercept and y-intercept from, and my slope from that thing right there. So we can look here and we can say, oh, just by looking at that, I can tell that my slope is going to be 4. So my slope is going to be m equals 4. And I can also tell what my y-intercept is. My y-intercept is going to be at 0, negative 1. That's my y-intercept. Okay? So we're going to have a y-intercept at 0, negative 1. Bam. Now, if I wanted to find my x-intercept, what we need to do, remember, to find your x-intercept, we're going to plug in 0 for y. So back over here, I can go negative 4x plus 0 equals negative 1. That 0 just kind of goes away because it's just 0. And then I can just come over here and I can divide both sides by negative 4, and we're going to get x equals 1/4. And so my x-intercept is going to be at 1/4, comma 0. So when we graph it, we'll see if that checks out. So now let's graph this guy. To graph this guy, we're going to just put a point at my y-intercept at 0, negative 1. And then if I have a slope of 4, remember, that slope of 4, it's like 4 over 1. That's just telling me how much we go up before we go over 1. Also, it's a positive slope. So a positive slope, when you read from left to right, goes up. Okay? A negative slope, when you read from left to right, goes down. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1 this way. We can also go down 4 in this way, and you can see how that makes a positive slope there. And I can just draw this guy out. Hopefully your line is a little bit straighter than mine is. But there we go. And there is our graph. Okay, my domain and range. Now, we haven't really talked about domain and range a lot yet this year, but you've definitely seen it before. I want you to remember that domain is your left and right numbers, your range is your up and down. Now, domain, we're just going to say is x equals all real numbers, or negative infinity to positive infinity. And my range is going to be the same thing, except we're going to use y. So we use y equals all real numbers, or negative infinity to positive infinity. Do not worry about this. It's just going to be all real numbers or negative infinity to positive infinity for all of our linear equations. Whenever that changes, I'll be sure to let you know. Let's take a look at our next problem here. So let's take a look at x plus 3/4 y equals 6. So once again, our first step is to get that y by itself. So to do that here, I'm just going to minus x to both sides. I'm going to end up with 3/4 y equals negative x plus 6. And then I need to clear this fraction out. So to do that, we're going to multiply both sides by 4. Okay? And we're going to end up with 3y equals, and I need to distribute this to both of these guys. So we're going to go 4 times negative x is going to be negative 4x. 4 times 6 is 24. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And so we're going to end up with this. We're going to end up with y equals negative 4/3 x plus 8. And so once again, guys, this is going to tell us a lot about our graph. We're going to learn what my slope is. There's my slope. And my y-intercept is going to be right there. So my slope, we already decided that my slope is going to be negative 4/3. And my y-intercept is right there. My y-intercept is going to be at 0, 8. Okay, now before we graph this, let's go find my x-intercept. And I want to remind you how easy this is. To find my y-intercept here, I really could have just plugged in 0 for x. But now to find my x-intercept, all we got to do is plug in 0 for y. So let's go over here to find my y-intercept. I'm going to plug in 0 for y. So we're going to have x plus 3/4 times 0 instead of y equals 6. Now, anything times 0 is just 0, so we're just going to end up with x equals 6. So my x-intercept is just going to be at 6, 0. Okay? So now we get a very good idea of where my graph is located at and what we're doing here. Okay? So let's go ahead, let's put this on my graph down here. So I'm going to go ahead and graph both of my intercepts. My y-intercept is 0, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's like up here, just off the graph. My x-intercept is going to be at 6, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. Okay, now my slope, I want you to notice my slope is negative. And that makes sense because look, if we start at that top point, we'd have to go down to this point. So as I read from left to right, my graph goes down. All right, and then we can also mark off points with my slope. We can go down 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, 2, 3, put a point, down 1, 2, 3, 4, over 1, 2, 3. Hey, it matches up with my other point there. So now I can just draw my graph, okay? Just like that. Look how easy that is. All right, our domain and range. Remember, your domain and range, just the same for all of these. Your domain is going to be x equals all real numbers, negative infinity to positive infinity. And our range is going to be the same thing, except we're just going to use a y. Okay? So we'll go y equals all real numbers and negative infinity to positive infinity. Okay? All right, let's turn that page and let's take a look at number 3. So number 3 says, find the slopes and intercepts and then graph. Okay, so find the slopes and intercepts and then graph. Well, this one, your y is already solved for, but we really need to understand something about this. This is called a zero slope, okay, or m equals 0. What happens is if there's no x, for my slope to be attached to? See, no x. We have a slope of 0. So what we can do is that's just going to tell me what my y-intercept is. So my y-intercept is still going to just be at 0, 2. So that's just going to be my y-intercept, and I can just have a point at 0, 2. And then with my y-intercept, if I have a slope of 0, my graph is just going to go flat. So the 0 slope is just flat. And then I want you to notice how it does not touch the x-axis. And without touching the x-axis, we just have no x-intercept. So we just call this NA. There's no x-intercept. Doesn't apply. There's no x-intercept. The opposite is true whenever I have just x. So whenever there's just y, it's a 0 slope and it's flat. Whenever I have just x, well, we solve for x and we end up with negative 3x equals 12. Divide both sides by negative 3. And we're going to end up with x equals negative 4. Now, that just tells me what my x-intercept is. So my x-intercept is just going to be at negative 4, 0. And let me put this on our graph over here. Okay? So if we have a point at negative 4, 0, we can just put that right there. And then I want you to notice, all right, we have a point out here. We have the x-intercept. This one is actually going to go straight up and down. This is what is known as a undefined slope. Okay? We can write that out here for my slope. My m is undefined, so we can just write undefined slope. Okay? So that really just means that my graph is just going to go straight up and down. Okay? And that's just all my graph is going to do there. It's just going to go straight up and down. And then here, I didn't have an x-intercept. Notice how it doesn't touch the y-axis. So this one, I have no y-intercept. Okay? All right, let's move on down here. Let's write the equation in slope-intercept form for the following. All right, so to write it in slope-intercept form, I need to find the slope and the y-intercept so I can write my equation. So first off, let's find 2 points. So here's a point, here's a point. So we're trying to find 2 points where it goes through exactly at one of the crosshairs. Okay, so now I have that point, I can count up and over. So we're going to count up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So on top of the fraction, I'll have a 6. And then I'm going to go over. 1, 2. Nice. So it's going to be 6 over 2 is going to be my slope. Or 6 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to have a slope of 3. And I know that it's positive because check it out. It's going to go up and then over, and as I read from left to right, it goes up. All right, my y-intercept, that's where it intersects the y-axis. Remember, this is your y-axis, this is your x-axis. So it's going to intercept the y-axis at negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, negative 5. So whenever I write my equation, I just need to write it like this. Y equals slope times x minus 5. Bam, easy peasy. Okay, our next one over here. Let's first find 2 points. So here's a point, here's a point. We're going to count down and over this time because this one I automatically know. Look at this. I know it has a negative slope because as I read from left to right, it's going down. Okay, so my negative slope here, we are going to go with, we're going to go down 1. So in my fraction, I'm going to have a 1 on top, and then I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be 1/4. And then I know that it's going to be negative. And that can't reduce, so we're just going to rewrite it. It's going to be negative 1/4 is my slope. My y-intercept is right there. That's where it intercepts the x-axis. It's going to be up 1, 2, 3. So my y-intercept is going to be at 0, 3. And then I can write my equation. My equation is just going to be y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3. All right, we just got 2 more problems to do. Let's take a look at 7 and 8. So number 7, I want you to remember this formula. Our formula for slope is m equals, you can write this in any order, it just has to be the same on top and bottom. I write it like this. I go y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. But your 1's could be first and your 2's could be second. It really doesn't matter. Okay? Now, what I like to do is I like to come in here and label my guys. So I'm going to label it x1, x2, x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay? And then we can just build my fractions. We're just going to go m equals negative 1 minus 5 over 3 minus 3. Perfect. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. 3 minus 3 is 0. Oh no. Normally we get a number, but we messed up here somewhere. Oh, I see what we did here. We should have instead, and this is, I totally made this mistake on purpose so you could see this. We're going to go 3 minus a negative 3, which is not 0. 3 minus a negative 3 is positive 6. And then negative 6 divided by positive 6 is negative 1. So my slope for this one is negative 1. Okay? Over here, once again, I want to show you that you can do it in either order. Okay? You could instead say that this is x2 and y2. And this is x1 and y1. Like I said, it doesn't matter which order they go in. So you could instead, you just have to make sure that your y's are on top and your x's are on bottom. And if you do one of these first, you also have to do one of those first on the bottom. Okay? So I'm just going to go 1 minus 5 over 0 minus 6. We're going to get negative 4 over negative 6, which will reduce to positive 2/3. So my slope will be 2/3. Bam! Super simple there. All right, as always, if you need any help with this, be sure to let me know. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, guys.